Hello and welcome to the Merriweather Knitting Podcast. My name is Gabriella and I'm coming to you today from my home in Germany, where I'm so excited to chat with you about knitting and making and all that I've been up to in my textile practice lately. You may hear some noises in the background because my two daughters are kind of in their rest time. Vivian is fast asleep in her stroller right outside the door to this room. And Esmeralda is listening to a little audio story and doing some art and crafts. So she might run in here and show me something or something during this podcast. But I wanted to sit down to chat with you because it's been a little while and I've just been loving my knitting so much. I think I'll just jump right in and share with you my first thing, my first finished object that I've completed. It's actually the only finished object this episode, but it's just so special and so lovely. We're not really anymore in the kind of, at least here where I live, in the high winter season where it's super cold and super snowy and windy. But I'm hoping that maybe there's some chances for me to wear these. It's really been pretty nice and warm lately, 10 degrees Celsius even, from like 5 degrees to 10 degrees. But my finished object is this beautiful pair of mittens, the Moonlight Traveler mittens by Nina Pomerenke of A Crafter's Tale. You may have seen her already here on YouTube. She's a lovely podcaster who I just enjoy and adore, and her designs are just out of this world beautiful. She's so such an artist, as I spoke about previously in my previous episode. She's just such an artist when it comes to knitwear design and specifically colorwork design. I feel like she has a beautiful way of just having these beautiful natural motifs, kind of traditional natural inspired motifs, but just so creative and bold and beautiful and wonderful, and pieces that I know I'm going to wear and just love. There are just certain pieces of knitwear and pieces of, like clothing, especially handmade clothing, that when I just put them on, I feel so happy. And wearing them all day, like, I already know one of these, the ends is not woven in. I wanted to weave in the ends, but I didn't get around to it. So that will come soon. Probably right before the next snowy day, if I'm honest. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I'll do it today, but I don't know. It just always takes me a long time. But this one I wove in right away. And okay, don't look at the back because I'm going to talk about that. But okay, these are the mittens. They're so beautiful. They're unblocked, so you can see that they're still not perfect. They're going to look so much even better once they're blocked. But they're just so beautiful. It's a gorgeous moth motif with a moon and little stars. And there's this beautiful kind of botanical motif around the cuff. And even the thumb has a little moon. Can you believe it? Isn't that just so beautiful? These mittens were such a joy to knit. I loved every single row, every single round. Knitting them was just so inspiring, and I love to watch the moth kind of emerge from the knitting as I just knit and knit each single row. And if you've never knit colorwork before, I think a pattern like this would be such a good place to start. It's not necessarily even the most simple of knits, but I don't really actually believe that you should always start with the simplest, easiest kind of project when it comes to new techniques. I think you should start with something that inspires you and that's so lovely. And for me, a motif like this that's big and bold and beautiful and intricate inspires me to just knit on and learn. And that's just, I feel like this would be perfect for that if this kind of motif inspires you too, which, I mean, look at it, how could it not? It's just so gorgeous. But yeah, I knit this out of some leftover Hebridean 2-ply yarn. That's Virtual Yarns, Alice and Jade Starmore's yarn company. That was left over from my Elizabeth I sweater that I knit a couple of years ago. And I love, love, love this colorway. This colorway is called Macaire. That's the darker green. And it really looks just so beautiful and multidimensional and earthy. And then this light, bright, beautiful, vibrant green is a naturally dyed green yarn from a German natural hand dyer. And I got these skeins at a local yarn festival in the summer last year. And it was just so special. Both of these yarns are so special to me. And I love the way they kind of play together. I said this last time, but they're just kind of remind me of kind of like something medieval, a medieval color combination, a medieval motif. just so lovely. And I also just have been so into kind of tonal combinations. Yeah, monochrome, tonal, kind of like two shades of the same color. So like a darker and a lighter one. You know, this darker green with this lighter green. Also not super, super high contrast. I love that look. I think it looks so beautiful and so subtle and refined, especially with a bold, like intense, unique motif, colorwork motif like this. I think it looks so good. So I'm so happy with these mittens, and I think they're going to be my very favorite. And I just love that I get to keep them forever. I think they're so wonderful. And I didn't have them finished in the time that we had really cold, snowy days. Like I said, now that's kind of over that part of the year. Maybe it'll come back for a few days, who knows. But next year, I'm going to be wearing these a lot at that time of year. And I just can't wait. I really can't wait. And honestly, all of Nina's patterns are just so beautiful. I'm like, I want to cast on another pair of colorwork mittens because they're just so fun to knit, so beautiful, and I think they would also make an incredibly beautiful gift to someone who you love very much and who you know will appreciate a piece like this. I'm very happy to have these for myself. I do not want to give these away ever, except to maybe my daughters when I'm very old, but hopefully by then I will be able to knit them their own pairs. But I think like I could see knitting a pair like this, or one of Nina's designs, any one of her designs, honestly, for people who I really cherish, and yeah, women in my life who I know would just love and love a beautiful kind of heirloom piece like this. And the thing is with colorwork mittens like this is that they're just so warm. It's like a double layer of wool. They're also knit at a very fine gauge, of course, so it's nice and tightly knit, but also the double layers, we have all the floats. It's just extra insulation. And I also have a pair of mittens that is knit with some worsted weight yarn, and that's lovely as well. But I also have a pair of mittens I knit which are fingering weight yarn, and they do keep my hands warm, but there's just it's a world of difference, a world apart when I put these on. Like, you could just already tell how much warmer they are. So yeah, they're so wonderful and so insulating. What did I want to say? Okay, so I am sometimes a little bit naughty when it comes to color work. I'm not that experienced. I feel like now I'm getting there though. I'm getting more and more experience, gathering experience. I'm loving color work lately. I've totally fallen in love with color work, but I break certain rules. One of those being is that I absolutely pretty much never pick up floats when I have a long color work strand. And of course that sometimes can be a bit detrimental and a bit like bad in the end product, but I found that mostly with blocking it works. I'm more of a loose knitter, that helps a lot. I'm extra loose when I knit color work. I'm not a tight knitter at all when it comes to color work, but at least right now. That could of course change. But I found that if I finish, and I think I heard this somewhere, but it's a trick I like to do. When you do block your mittens, you block them properly, and then when you kind of turn them inside out, or whatever it is, the color work that you're knitting, whether it be a sweater or a cowl or something, you could turn it inside out. And if it has long floats, I mean, look at the inside. I love the way it looks. I actually I've always been a bit embarrassed about showing my floats because I don't think they look very orderly, but this looks kind of pretty orderly for me. I'm not ashamed. I love it. Okay, but what you can do is you can lightly rub the back, and they'll lightly felt together, especially if you're knitting with a rustic yarn like this. This is of course all non-superwash yarn. You can rub it a little bit and it will felt a tiny bit, just those floats, and then it'll create a body. So you're not going to stick your finger through and get your fingers caught up in the floats if they're really long. That's a little trick that I do, and you know, if you're like me and you don't like to catch the floats, find that very cumbersome, especially when the yarn twists. Is there a technique that you can do where the yarn doesn't twist up on itself to catch floats? Because if there is, I would probably catch floats, but I just do not like when yarn twists up. But yeah, that really, really works. So that's wonderful. The other thing I did that was a bit, yeah, I cut a little bit of a corner, but it was calculated and I knew it would have this effect, is that I changed yarn dominance halfway through this project when I came up here. So when you are knitting color work, if you don't already know, you're knitting with 2 strands of yarn that are different colors. As you can see, the light color and the dark color. And one of the colors is the dominant color, and one is the like background color, the kind of less dominant color. And it really makes a huge difference which yarn is which, and it will make the motif look very different. I'm going to show you because this mitten can demonstrate that very well on the back. So when you are knitting dominantly, in case you don't know, just to let you know, usually if you're knitting with 2 hands and one yarn on each hand, the yarn that you want to be dominant is held on the left hand, and the float is held at the very farthest back behind the other yarn, if that makes sense. So while I knit this part of the mitten, I held this darker green dominant. I held it in my left hand, and the float ran along the back of the knitting, farthest back, like over the other stitches. And that was because I wanted, of course, this dark green moth to stand out and to be the dominant, beautiful, you know, main focal point of this part of the mitten. I didn't want it to fall back among the other stitches. I want it to come forward. So I knit that as the dominant one. When I came to the top, I wanted to switch, as you can imagine, and make this moon and the stars the dominant color and the dominant motif. I didn't want this moon to be hidden now behind the dark. So I switched and I made the darker yarn, I held it in my left hand and made that strand come behind. And so that had the great effect of making the moon and the stars dominant up here, and down here the moth motif is dominant. Now, the back of the mitten has these little beautiful, I would say, stars as well, just kind of like a pattern, a beautiful pattern in the back. And you can see, I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, I think you can tell. You can see up here is where I switched dominance. So down here, there's all the dark stitches are dominant, where I was trying to make the moth dominant, and the light ones, the light green, falls back. And up here I switched it and I made the light green the dominant, and the dark falls back up here. So you don't see the dark as pronounced and the light is much more. So you see it's almost like a stripe. You can see the huge difference. And of course that can easily be avoided. You can switch dominant yarn halfway through the project, halfway through a row, whenever you want to. But I cut corners with this and I just decided, no big deal. I'm gonna be the one to see it, and I don't mind at all. In fact, I kind of think it's cool to have a little bit of something extra and to look at that. I think it's just fun. I'm the only one who's going to tell. So, yeah, I decided to do that. And I think it's a good opportunity just to demonstrate that yarn dominance, color dominance in colorwork knitting, in case you weren't familiar or you want to see a very clear, you know, example of it. I think you can see it there pretty well. But yeah, those are my mittens, my Moonlight Traveler mittens. I'm so happy with these, and I can't wait to knit another pair of mittens soon. I think they're just such a fun project and so beautiful. And I feel like one of those that you just can't go wrong with, because you can have the mittens or you can gift them, like I said, and they're just so beautiful. So yeah, there they are. Now we're entering into the next part of this podcast, which is my works in progress. And right now I have 3 projects going. I'm loving them all, and I think I'm going to start by showing you the one that I mentioned last episode that I was going to cast on. And that is my Byron sweater by Natasha Hornby, I think is the name of the designer. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous design. It's a male sweater, like a masculine sweater, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful design. And I'm knitting it with the suggested yarns, which is pretty unusual, I feel like, for me. I love to substitute yarns and just figure a yarn out for the project, but this time I liked her combination and it looked cool. I've never knit with the yarns she suggested, which was Holst Garn. Of course, I've heard so much about Holst Garn. They're a very well-known, wonderful yarn company that has rustic yarn, 100% wool yarn, for I feel like a pretty decent, affordable price. It is a Danish company, I believe, and yeah, I just really wanted to try out that yarn for a long time, so I was like, this is maybe my opportunity. I'll just buy the suggested yarn. And I'm overall very happy about that. I think the end product is going to be gorgeous because of that decision, but the process is a little bit challenging. So I'll show you what I have so far here. It's very tangled up. That is the main part of the challenge. It's knit with 4 strands of yarn at once. So here it is. Here is what I have so far. It's beautiful. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous motif, kind of pattern, stitch pattern. It looks almost like color work in a way, but it is not color work. It's a different stitch pattern using 2 different colors, and it's just so beautiful. And up close, it looks really beautiful too. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell very well. I think it's not going to focus very well, but I'll try to show you up close. I hope you can see. Maybe I can kind of crop in a little bit so you can tell. But it's just beautiful, and it reminds me of kind of like creeping vines or creeping ivy over a golden background, kind of like golden leaves, or just, you know, it's just so stunning. I love this color combination, and I love how it's looking and how it's knitting up. And I definitely know that I want to knit another one of these sweaters as well in the future, using just 2 strands of yarn though, not 4. So the pattern calls for 4 strands of yarn. It calls for 2 colors of this main color, a main color, 2 kind of main colors, being in fingering weight yarn, which is the Holsgarn Super Soft. I've chosen the colors for my 2 main colors as, I think this is called, oh no, I feel like I'm getting all mixed up. I think it's called Brass, and this one is called something else, Amazon or something, or I forget the name. It's a dark, dark foresty green, an ivy green, very little bit of bluish dark green, and beautiful brassy golden color. So these 2 colors are my 2 main colors, and then each one of those individually is held together with another strand of yarn, which is the Filcolana Titicaca, which is 100% alpaca lace weight yarn. And I've chosen for these 2 colors this one, which is called Crown, a gorgeous luminous golden color, and this color, which is maybe also Amazon, I don't remember, it's another beautiful golden, not golden, green, ivy, foresty green. This one's a bit more of a, it has some warmer strands also spun in there, some kind of golden, beautiful orangey strands with the like cool green, so it's very beautiful. And of course 100% alpaca just glows. I feel like it's so luminescent almost, and you could just see the soft, fluffy, beautiful glowing yarn is so beautiful. I just love alpaca for that kind of sheen and luster. It's really lustrous, I have to say. But I think in the original pattern, and I don't remember because I just looked and I saw and I thought it looks nice, but I'm gonna look for my own colors. I think in the original pattern, it's 4 completely different colorways, like not green and gold and gold. It's like green and red and gold and orange. Of course, those are not that's a random example, but it's just 4 completely different colorways. And so I think that having 4 completely different colorways makes the holding of 4 strands of yarn like more, it makes more sense that you would be holding 4 strands of yarn. And I think it probably has also a gorgeous, cool effect too, really multi-dimensional effect. But I didn't do that. I just chose these 2 colorways and kind of color schemes, and I'm holding them together, and it makes it really difficult. I'm loving the fabric. The fabric is so lovely. It's not very soft because of the texture, but I think that once it's blocked and worn, it's going to really soften up. And I just love how it looks. I think it's gorgeous, and I know my husband Nick, for whom I am knitting this garment, is going to just get so much wear out of this piece and love it and wear it all the time. So in that way, I don't mind. It's a process. I'm gonna get through it, but it's really hard to take this anywhere with me. So right now, this is how the yarn looks. It's completely tangled right now. It will not be that hard to untangle because I'm constantly untangling it. Like truly, every time I set it down, I pick it up, I have to untangle it. And I had taken it with me to my bedroom to do knitting there. And I just brought it back here, and now it's tangled up because of that. So it's one that I have to keep in one space, like parked. And actually, I love to sit right over here on this couch in the evenings and knit. And so I think I'm just gonna have to keep this project here for that only, because it's really hard to move. And even if I move it, like I said, it gets tangled up immediately. It's sticky yarn, it's natural yarn. It's going to just wind up and get all caught up on itself. So that's the only tough thing about this project. It's just not in any way portable, and that makes it pretty slow going too for me, because I do like to take my project different places, whether that be even just within our own home, different rooms, or whether that be out and about, going somewhere, car knitting, anywhere. I tend to get a lot of knitting done in those places, and I can't do that with this piece, so it's just going to be slow, but that's no problem. I told Nick when I started this, I'm like, you're gonna have to wait at least like a year. Just don't expect this for at least a year, because I think it's probably going to take a long time. And I'm happy I told him that, because Now, if it gets done faster than that, it's just a plus and it's like a bonus. So yeah, I am loving this project though. Don't get me wrong, it's so beautiful. And like I said, I have plans to knit another one day. I think I mentioned it also before as well, but I would love to knit one out of like a dark gray and a very light gray, and kind of, because I think those two colors together would make it almost look like chainmail, kind of like a medieval vibe, and also at the same time be very, very neutral. So for me, I'll think of like this kind of medieval fun look, kind of like a medieval fair when I knit it up, which I just think is so fun. I'm really into that right now the last few months. I've loved like medieval, you know, art and just a whole vibe. And but for anyone else who sees the sweater, it will probably look pretty neutral because it'll be like different shades of gray. So it's a nice basic interest with a gray sweater with some extra interest. So that's what I would love to do one day. And I'm thinking Rauma yarn would be perfect. I think Rauma would kind of be a bit of an equivalent to these two held together, because Rauma is like a light sport, heavy fingering weight yarn. So I think that would be perfect. But can't get ahead of myself. I have to finish this one first. And I don't even know if Nick wants a gray sweater, but he loves black slacks, black jeans, everything. And so I know that will go well with it. And yeah, if he likes the fit of this one, I'll knit another one like that for him. So yeah, that is my little project for him. Now, the next project I have to share with you is just one that I have been so excited about for a long time. I've been having it, just holding onto this project before casting it on in my heart and my imagination for months and months and months. So I knew that I wanted to knit this project between kind of the end of December and springtime. The time of year that I just feel like often I need a little bit of a pick-me-up. I wanted something joyful and fun and bright and lovely, something that I'd be really excited about working on, and this was just the perfect project, so I wanted to keep it for that time of year. By the way, I just had to move Vivian and her stroller into this room and kind of rock her back to sleep, and so you may hear her snoring. She's got a bit of a cold and you might hear her little snoring in there, so if you hear it, that's what it is. But anyway, I was so excited about this project, and it has just been such a joy. It's brought me so much joy knitting on it so far. So we'll start with the yarn, because the story starts there really. Back last year in 2023, we were in the States for a couple of months for my sister's wedding and for a little family visit, and while we were there I ordered some yarn from Paper Crane Yarns, which is the yarn shop and hand-dyed yarn company run and owned by Ashley of Paper Crane Yarns here on YouTube. She's a podcaster and a dear friend of mine too. And I ordered yarn from her, and she sent me along 3 skeins, sweaters quantity worth of this gorgeous yarn. This is the ball band. I've taken it off to put it in my little journal. I have a little knitting journal, which is poorly maintained, but I keep in, like, I just don't update it enough, but I like to put little, like, this kind of special ball band in there. So or skein band, you know what I mean. But this is it. This is her beautiful logo and the band, and this is the beautiful yarn colorway. And so she sent me a sweater's quantity worth of her beautiful superwash merino base in her Aura colorway, and it is 100 grams, 437 yards. It's just an absolutely gorgeous base and gorgeous yarn. And when I saw this, I remember I was like truly like, my breath was taken. I was crazily amazed and in awe, awestruck by the fact that she would send me this beautiful yarn. And her Aura colorway is so beautiful. I have admired it since I think she first dyed it and shared it on Instagram a long time ago. Back, yeah, we were both actually pregnant with our babies at the same time, our daughters, and I remember just kind of celebrating with her from afar through her podcast on Instagram, and I just love her so much, and this colorway is just so beautiful, and I just was so excited to get some of it. It's just so beautiful. So actually it's so interesting because I as a child, my favorite color, I always said my favorite color was orange and pink and orange. And that was kind of before I realized there was a color which combined them both, which is kind of like coral and these kind of pinky beautiful coral colors. And ever since then, truly, that has been my kind of innermost favorite color. And I always had that with me. Kind of tangerines, corals, pinks, and oranges, like everything on that kind of shade spectrum are just my very favorite, if I have to say. I mean, I love green a lot, and I love lots and lots of different colors. I think a lot of colors have something, but there's just something in my innermost essence that kind of just has always, I feel like that is my innermost essence, this kind of pink, orange, tangerine to coral kind of color palette. And I feel like this yarn, this skein, like specifically this even dye lot of Aura that Ashley sent me, is just exactly that favorite color of mine. And so I loved it. I have just had it, and I waited for a while because I was like, I need to think of a project that really, you know, that I will wear a lot with this yarn, and I want to think of a piece that I'm gonna love knitting. And so I kind of just let it sit, and I thought about it and looked at patterns, and it kind of occurred to me I really wanted to knit a cardigan with this yarn. I just really wanted a nice, beautiful cardigan to knit with it. And so I kept my eyes open for cardigan patterns. And first, I thought I was going to knit the April cardigan, which I think the pattern is so beautiful, and I maybe want to knit this someday. I'll put a picture so you can see how it looks. It's a petite knit pattern. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, classic, gorgeous design. It needed to be something, the pattern I was looking for needed to also be something that would showcase the hand-dyed yarn. So a simple-ish kind of a palette, like base, not, you know, something with tons of texture or anything. And that's, of course, a very simple stockinette sweater or cardigan. So that was the first option. But then I started seeing the Agnate or Agneta, I don't know exactly how it's pronounced. I'm going to say Agneta cardigan by Petite Knits. And I just fell in love with it. And I've never knit brioche, except for, I think, a little bit of brioche and a shawl or something. But I've never knit a big brioche piece of knitting before. Definitely not a garment, not even a full accessory. So I didn't have much experience with brioche, and I think it looks wonderful, but I'm not crazy about every single thing I see in brioche. I definitely think it's something that, like a texture that is suitable for certain things, but when I saw this cardigan, I thought, that's perfect. I would love to wear that cardigan. I would love to have that cardigan, and it looks like it'd be such a fun way to practice and learn brioche as a technique, and as a beautiful texture. And I thought it would showcase a hand-dyed yarn really beautifully, and it just looked so squishy and lovely and nice and cozy. And the April sweater is a little bit more kind of tailored and slim fit to the body. And so I decided I was going to knit the Agneta cardigan. And so I was like, this is perfect. I have the yarn for it. And then I started looking at the kind of, what are they called? Project pages on Ravelry for the Agneta. And also for the April. The April cardigan, I would have 100% have had enough. I would, with 3 skeins of yarn, I would have had leftover yarn knitting that in my size. But I kept looking at the project pages for the Agneta cardigan, and I realized that I think it takes quite a bit more yardage with the brioche, and it's a tiny bit oversized. I don't want mine to be very oversized, so I'm knitting it to not be oversized, but I realized that the yardage is significantly more, and so I was getting a little bit nervous. So I decided I was going to get some yarn and kind of do something to kind of give myself a bit of a safety margin so I didn't run out of yarn, because being so far away from the States, it's not that easy for me just to order yarn from Ashley. It's so hard right now to order overseas from the States to Europe and back. I'm sure you're all aware of that if you're knitters and you like yarn that you see from the other side of the pond. It's like sometimes so sad to be like, oh, I would love to have a skein of that yarn, or I'd love to, like, you know, try that out, and it's just so almost impossible, you know, with shipping. So yeah, I knew that wouldn't be so easy for me. So I wanted to do a kind of compromise. And so I got some yarn, and I'm going to be knitting a different color, what is it called? Kind of button band. So the cardigan is this brioche cardigan, as you can see, and then there's just this double knitting button band around the edge. And so I thought, if I just knit that double knitting button band in a different colorway, marl it together with the same mohair, then it should probably blend well, and it's okay if there's a little contrast there. That will make up the little bit of yardage and meterage difference, just in case I don't have enough of the beautiful hand-dyed yarn. And I'm hoping that that works and that that proves to be true. And I'm pretty sure it will, because it's kind of one of those things that I could risk trying to knit this sweater completely with my beautiful hand-dyed Aura skeins, but I would not be happy if I ran out of yarn. That would be so sad. So I just decided to do that. So I want to show you what I have so far of the sweater. Oh yeah, just a second. The next part of the yarn story. I'm sorry, this is such a crazy long story, but it's just like the most fun project for me ever. Planning this project and knitting has just been so much fun. So the other thing that I needed to figure out was finding mohair yarn, because as with many petite knit patterns, it's a mohair also kind of held a double yarn situation. So I needed to find mohair yarn, and at first I thought, okay, I will just hold a kind of cream or very lightweight light color, and that will look beautiful with this yarn. And I had some cream yarn, and I kind of held the strands together, and I realized, I don't know, it's gonna kind of mute this beautiful skein of Aura if I do a light cream. So I started thinking and looking for a different kind of option, because I really wanted to make sure that I kept the beautiful essence of this specifically this dye-lot. I think is just so rich, and there's so many different shades. There are cooler tones, almost like orchid tones of purple even in there, light peaches, corals, then like speckles that are really beautiful, like crimson tangerine shades, and then these lighter reddish shades, and pinks, and these paler pinks, and these rich. It's just such a beautiful light speckled kind of tonal colorway. It's just so beautiful. So I wanted to kind of showcase that too, and I also know that I want it to be wearable for me, and if it were too muted down, like if it were more muted down with the white or cream, I don't know if it would suit me well. So I looked and looked, and I finally settled on a color. Before I settled on this one, there was like another orchid shade that I thought it was like a light orchid. There was kind of a banana yellow shade that I thought of. There was another kind of, you know, yellowish shade that I thought of, that I considered. But in the end, I chose this yarn from Filcolana. This is the Filcolana Tilia mohair lace yarn, which is one of my very favorite bases for mohair lace. I always return to it. I love it. I think it's so squishy, and I don't know what it is. Their colorways I just love the colorways that Filcolana has on this base. They're so beautiful, and I'm just really drawn to them. And I looked at so many different mohairs, but just this was the one that I ended up really wanting the most and thinking it would be the best with. So this colorway is called Flamingo, and it's a very beautiful kind of pinky tone, flamingo-y pink. And I chose it because it really matches up with certain shades inside of the Aura skein, and it kind of just blends really nicely together. And seeing the knitted fabric, I'm so excited and happy about this choice together. Oh, I just love it. So, okay, so yeah, by the way, the yarn I chose for the button band is the same as that one. It's Flamingo, but it's Arwetta from Filcolana, which is their merino nylon combination, which is pretty similar, I think, also to Ashley's base. They're both very soft and lovely. Ashley's is like, oh, so beautiful, but even more beautiful, but they're kind of similar enough that I know that the structure and the weight is like comparable. So here I am, I've cast it on, and I've got my beautiful little gorgeous knitting so far. It's so small. After that huge speech, you're probably like, well, this is what you're showing me, this tiny bit of knitting. First of all, we are slow knitters here. We do not rush. There is no rush. This is fun and joyful, no pressure. But it is also, it's been a bit of a learning curve with this pattern. Honestly, it's been really fun though. I'll tell you about it. So you start on by casting on and knitting this beautiful double knitting band. This is the back of the neck, which I love that this is the back of the neck, because I realized if I make mistakes in the brioche as I learn to flow with brioche, which I've done a couple of times, especially at the beginning, it's no big deal. It's the back of my neck, and I don't think anyone's going to see it. I'm not going to see it. It's fine with me if my mistakes happen back there. Hopefully by the time I get to the front of the sweater in a little while, I'll be in the groove and my mistakes will be very minimal. But yeah, you start with the button band and then you move on and start to knit the back kind of yoke. Oh, there's Vivian snoring. And so that's what I've done. Now you can see how the button band looks combined with the beautiful Aura colorway from Paper Crane Yarns. I think it turns out so well. It's such a beautiful combination together, and this mohair held together just looks so beautiful. I think it highlights a different kind of side of this hand-dyed yarn. It just looks so wonderful, so I'm so excited. I know that I'm going to wear this all the time. It's going to be such a classic for me. It's such a staple piece in my wardrobe. But I did hit a couple bumps in the road. You can see there are a couple mistakes up here. But I knit and knit and knit. This was very long. I had actually completed all of the increases for the back kind of yoke before having to go on to the next part, which was, I don't know, I think you do the sleeves, or you go, not sleeves, you like go to the front. I don't know what happens next. I'm not really one to read the pattern ahead, but I had finished this whole section and I was checking my stitch count and I checked it wrong. As a complete novice to brioche, I counted every single stitch. I counted the yarn overs, so brioche has like yarn overs. I counted the yarn overs as one individual stitch. And with brioche, a yarn over isn't counted as an individual stitch. It's like together as a brioche stitch with another stitch you knit. If you've knit brioche, you'll know what I mean. If you don't, it's not that important. Long story short, I counted wrong, completely wrong. And so I thought I had way too many stitches on the needles. And I was like confused because I had been writing down my increases. I had been keeping it written down with my increase, and I was like, I increased the exact right amount. How am I this off? I've knit the number of stitches for like quite a few sizes different, like it's like 10 sizes ahead of me, like such a huge number of stitches compared to what I needed to have on the needles. So I was like confused, and I thought, okay, I guess I've got to rip back. This is going to be an experience. And lately I've been just so loving kind of challenging myself in my knitting, and that's one reason why I've loved this project too, and the brioche process, because now it's becoming really, really intuitive and really relaxing and easy and almost like, you know, mindless. But it was a challenge to learn it. But I thought, this is my next challenge. I'm going to learn how to rip back in brioche. It's going to help me to like understand brioche completely as a fabric. You know, with knitted stitches like stockinette, I feel completely comfortable ripping back, fixing stitches. I'm so like, I know stockinette like the back of my hand. Many other certain kind of cable motifs I feel really comfortable with, but this seems like such a different world, and so I was like, this is a great way to get to know it. And I do think it was, but I did it. I looked up tutorials, I read online, I found an amazing tutorial about ripping back in brioche, video tutorial, and I did it. I ripped back in brioche, and in that process, I actually also made a mistake, but I ripped all the way back, and actually, I didn't need to. All along, I had the right number of stitches, I just had counted them wrong. So, yeah, and I realized that after the fact, because then I like looked up, are you supposed to, like, how are brioche stitches counted? Thankfully, we have Google. I mean, what would I do without Google? I would just have gone on and made the mistake. But I'd been confused, or hopefully would have had somewhere where I would have found that out. But yeah, long story short, made that huge mistake, and now I have to re-knit that whole section that I had knit before. And in my picking up of stitches, I didn't even realize this, so I was a few rows in, and I'm like, I'm not going to go back again. Even though I feel comfortable, I'm not going back. There are these little loops. So I think I had left a yarn over there and hadn't picked that up. I mean, nothing is going to be unraveling or anything, but it's a little bit of a flaw, which you can see from the right side. You can kind of tell there's a bit of a line there, but you can't really tell even, I feel like, from the right side. You can maybe very faintly tell. I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, but for me, it's okay. It's like a battle scar of the learning process. And I could, of course, rip back right now, but for that little tiny bit of, you know, that tiny little line, especially when it's just relaxed, you really can't see it when it's just relaxed. I know that some people would probably rip back, but I already ripped back, so I'm not going to do it again. And it's no big deal. It really doesn't bother me, especially because it's the back of the neck. So, you know, if it were the front, that may be a different story. But anyway, this is my beautiful Agnate cardigan. Agnate, I need to find out, I forget how it's pronounced, but it's just such a beautiful, beautiful pattern. I'm so excited to be knitting this up, and I'm going to be wearing this so much, I know, in the springtime and in springs to come, and even on cool, you know, maybe even summer evenings. Sometimes in Germany, I mean, it's really always different. Sometimes here in Germany, it can be that we have super hot weather, even nights, but often too, nights get cool and you kind of want a little layer in the evenings. And so I feel like this is even wearable for evenings. You know, will be perfect for summer evening too. So I am so excited about this project, and I would say that this is my biggest, you know, my first love right now, and really has been just a ray of sunshine for me in this time of year. I do like I said, it's just sometimes this time of year I just need a little pick me up, and this has been that for me. The last project I have to share with you is one that I just cast on last night, and it's a little hat. After my mittens, I have just been in need of a kind of smaller project, one I can take with me, and I haven't had one for like a couple of weeks, it feels like, and so I knew I needed one, and last night I was like, I'm just gonna cast one on. And so I looked in my little chest here for some yarn, and I found these gorgeous skein little balls. These balls were very sweetly sent to me in December by my dear friend Martina, who you may know from We Grow Wild, the We Grow Wild podcast, or yeah, Wild Knitting. She's just this amazing woman who I just absolutely adore, and I'm sure if you've seen her, you know why. She's just an amazing, wonderful person, and she sent me gorgeous yarn. I can go. Vivian has just woken up, but I just want to finish with showing you my last project before I go off with her. So here she's gonna join me for a few minutes. But yeah, I got this gorgeous yarn from Martina, which is this kind of like silvery, gray, beautiful, fluffy base with strands of glitter, I think Lurex, and brown and like camel, kind of caramel strands. So it's really beautiful, multi-dimensional, and just so incredibly fluffy and soft. And I think she knit a sweater and also a hat with this yarn too. It's just the most fluffy yarn ever. It's so gorgeous and so beautiful, and I love it. Yeah, it's yarn. Vivian also just started saying yarn, which I think is so cute. Like we were in some context, she started saying yarn, and she saw yarn. Bless you! And she told me about it. So yes, thank you very much, thank you. And so yeah, I'm knitting up a hat. I just cast on a little hat in this beautiful fluffy yarn that I think is going to be so fun and so practical. And I am not sure yet exactly what I'm going to do. I've started kind of a 5x2 rib, and I'm going to add some texture in there and make it just a fun, wearable piece to grab and wear during the colder months, from the autumn to the spring. I think it's going to be so wonderful, and it's so fluffy, but it's also kind of light. It has a bit of lightness too. Wait, here's her note. So it has, it's wool, mohair, and lurex, which makes sense why it's so fluffy and soft, and the gorgeous sparkle is just so fun. So I love this yarn. It was such a special gift, and it's all the more special to know that, yeah, Martina said that she had knit a sweater out of this and a hat, and to know that she has yarn that she wears, like a project she wears out of this yarn. I'll have one. It just feels like a really special connection. I just really adore her too, so it's really special, and I can't wait to have this project finished. It's gonna be the perfect thing to just take with me along wherever I go and have in my bag. Bless you, Vivian. Just for the next few weeks. I love it. And I think a hat is fun too. It's been a little while since I've knit a hat, like an adult size hat. I've knit a few bonnets lately. I haven't knit that many hats. So I am really loving it. But that's my last project. That's all I have to share with you knitting wise. Thank you so much for joining me today and just sitting with me while I chat with you about my projects. I would love to hear about what you're making right now, what you're inspired by, what projects you're just working on, and what you're doing, how you're feeling this February. It's always so wonderful to catch up with you, and I love to hear from you, so share with me. Vivian's trying to touch the lens, so maybe see your finger. If you'd like to find me, you can find me on merryweatherliving.com. You can join and follow me, my newsletter, which is just a free email newsletter, the Merryweather Journal, where I just share kind of thoughts, poems, recipes, just different things that inspire me month to month. It's just a monthly newsletter and kind of little journal. And sometimes I share a recipe, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I share poetry or lyrics or music or stories or different things like that. So it's really fun there. That's a place where I really love that place, and I love to have a kind of journal from each month. So do join me there. And yeah, thank you, Vivian. And other than that, I'll see you again soon for more knitting conversation. Until next time, take care. Bye.